High seas tragedy in the Mediterranean as migrants, mostly from sub-Saharan African countries, die off the coast of Libya. Sectarian violence flares up in Nigeria's Kaduna state, where attacks have killed at least 200 people since December. And evidence mounts linking American football players with brain injuries. We'll have a report. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with yet another high seas tragedy on the Mediterranean. Now, the bodies of 74 migrants, mostly from sub-Saharan African countries, have been found washed up on a beach near the western Libyan city of Zawiya. That's according to Red Crescent spokesman. Mohammed Al-Misrati says the bodies were recovered on Monday and that they appear to have died over the past 2 days. Libya is the main departure point for migrants hoping to reach Europe by sea. They generally attempt crossing the dangerous waters in flimsy inflatable crafts loaded with small amounts of fuel, which are intended to get them only as far as European rescue vessels stationed in international waters. Most migrant boats depart from the stretch of Libyan coast between Tripoli and the Tunisian border to the west. Well, in South Africa, at least 20 shops, possibly belonging to immigrants, were looted in Pretoria overnight. South African police say they do not know the motive for the attacks. No deaths were reported. Authorities could not confirm if the attacks had deliberately targeted foreigners, but anti-immigrant violence has flared sporadically in South Africa against the backdrop of near-record unemployment. Foreigners are being accused of taking jobs from locals and getting involved in crime. South Africa, with a population of about 50 million, is home to an estimated 5 million immigrants. Now to central Nigeria, where sectarian violence is again flaring up in Kaduna state. Attacks have killed at least 200 people since December and left both Christian and Muslim communities in ruins. Reporter Chika Odua traveled to southern Kaduna state to investigate.
Says a prayer for his daughter Anna.
You are sweet soul, dressed in perfect peace.
She was 14 years old when she was gunned down during an attack on their community on Christmas Eve. Morik sits in his daughter's bedroom. She was here when she heard gunshots. She fled out the back door, but it was already too late. Witnesses say there were about 200 attackers, some carrying AK-47s. After a while, the police came and repelled the assailants.
The attackers are still outside the village. Any attempt by anybody to go 1 kilometer outside this village, he will be killed.
The community of Goska is remote. In these hills, mostly Christian farmers live alongside nomadic cattle herders who belong to the predominantly Muslim ethnic group called Fulani. Kaduna State is no stranger to sectarian strife. Residents say it started back in the 1980s. Disputes over politics and land rights can set it off. Local activists worry the nation has grown numb.
I know people don't want to see certain images, but I put that upon myself to put certain things out because it is those images that will bring out the reaction, that will make people pay attention. And then most importantly for us is to try to make people see beyond the figures.
The past year has seen conflict rise to unprecedented levels throughout central Nigeria. Some attribute it to more herders coming south looking for grazing land. Hundreds of residents have fled the violence. The state government emergency management agency says 204 people have been killed since December, but numbers are still being compiled. The Catholic Church has been collecting names and photos of the dead. The violence erupted in December, despite a government-imposed curfew.
You can go and count from the graveyard. You can go, even the bones are still there.
In Goska, residents say herders are trying to force them off their land. Police investigating told VOA they see a cycle of reprisal. Just a few kilometers away in the neighboring village of Dangoma, homes owned by Muslim families are in ruins. Residents say they were attacked December 23rd and 26th. That's the day before and 2 days after the attack on Goska. Muslim community leaders say Christian villagers are staking claims to land they don't own and driving herders away. One village leader gave VOA photos of the dead.
They will go to the media and say that Fulani are killing them. That is, they are the people causing all this problem. Blocking road, when they meet somebody is grazing his cows in the bush, they will just kill him, kill his cows. We lost almost more than 6,000 cows.
Together, they pray for souls of the dead. Abdullahi Jibril talks to a Fulani leader about his 3 sons. They were last seen grazing their cows in a predominantly Christian neighborhood in early January.
What hurts me most is that I can't find the corpses. I'm calling on the government to take charge and wipe my tears.
As state police investigate, communities are left to mourn and pray for peace. Chika Odua for VOA News, Kaduna, Nigeria.
Well, in East Africa, Somalia is facing an unprecedented drought, which experts say could lead to famine if the rainy season fails again. Millions of people are at risk amid massive die-offs of livestock. Jason Pattonkin reports from the northern Somaliland region.
The UN says more than 6 million people need food aid already in all of Somalia. After a year of drought, even the hyenas won't eat the carcasses of Mohammed Adengulad's livestock. There is too little meat on them.
I had 550 head, now only 50 remain. My family is made up of 10 members, and I must provide for them.
Herds are dying as there is little water or food in Somalia following 2 failed rainy seasons. Here in Somaliland in the northwest, at least 40% of goats and sheep have perished, amounting to more than 10 million animals. If April's rains fail again, people may be next. To stop the slide to famine, aid agencies and the government send water trucks to village wells, but their reach is limited. Mahmoud Ibrahim Yassin says only a few dozen of his animals were strong enough to reach this well, filled by aid group Save the Children. He said more than 100 of his animals were too weak to walk, but are too skinny to sell.
If we get rains, they will survive. But if there is no rain, I don't think they will survive.
For Gilo Ismail Muhammad's family, the rains will be too late. Over the past 7 months, they lost all 100 of their camels, whose milk they sold in markets. Now they are destitute, depending on handouts to survive.
That life will not come back. Now we have this life, and this is what Allah has for us. I did not ever see a drought like this. This is widespread. This is everywhere.
The UN has appealed for over $800 million to relieve famine across Somalia. Somaliland's National Drought Committee has raised under $7 million so far.
What's coming from the international community, from the donors, and even the local fundraising and the way people are supporting, you find that it's just a drop in the ocean. It's not contributing much. People are getting weaker and weaker day after day. The animals are dying day after day. So they will reach a stage where everything stops and then people start dying.
For millions in Somalia, surviving the drought is a race against time. Jason Patinkin for VOA News in Burao, Somaliland.
U.S. President Donald Trump visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture here in Washington on Monday, touring the museum's exhibit with a group that included Ben Carson, the president's pick to serve as the next Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the president's daughter, Ivanka. The president said the museum was fantastic and later read a quote from civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr.
Engraved in the wall very nearby, a quote by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. in 1955, he told the world, "We are determined to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream." And that's what it's going to be. We're going to bring this country together, maybe bring some of the world together, but we're going to bring this country together. We have a divided country. It's been divided for many, many years, but we're going to bring it together. I hope every day of my presidency, we will be honoring the determination and work towards a very worthy goal.
Well, the museum includes an exhibit dedicated to Ben Carson's rise from poverty to a prominent pediatric neurosurgeon. Well, President Trump named a new national security advisor Monday, selecting Army Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, a military strategist who has spent his entire career in the U.S. Armed Forces. Trump called the 54-year-old McMaster a man of tremendous talent and tremendous experience. McMaster is currently director of the Army's Capabilities Integration Center, an agency tasked with integrating war-fighting capabilities into the force and with other government agencies. McMaster will replace Michael Flynn, the retired Army general, whom Trump fired a week ago after just 24 days on the job. Now, the president has said it was unacceptable to him that Flynn lied to Vice President Mike Pence about contacts he had with the Russian ambassador to Washington in the weeks before Trump was inaugurated on January the 20th. Well, thousands of protesters rallied in cities and towns across the United States to oppose the Trump administration during Monday's President's Day holiday. The Note My President rallies had demonstrators gathered across America to support people of color, immigrants, Muslims, workers, LGBTQ people, and the poor. In New York City, a crowd of several thousand protesters stretched at least 8 blocks near the Trump International Hotel. Some of the protest marches, including one held in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., were greeted by counter demonstrations from supporters of President Trump. Well, one of President Trump's signature campaign promises was to crack down on illegal immigration. For the millions of people living in the shadows, many with American-born children, fear of the Trump administration is now pervasive. Here's VOA's Bill Rogers.
Here we go, I found it.
Cindy and her 3 children live in this one bedroom in an apartment shared with others. Born in Guatemala, she was brought to the U.S. when she was 5. She still has no papers, yet she's been working since she was 17. Scared of being deported, Cindy wants to stay in the only country she knows so she can make a better life for herself and her American-born children.
Even though I don't have papers, I feel that I'm from here. Of course, I'm proud of having been born in Guatemala, but I wasn't raised there. I don't know the culture over there. I don't know what it's like to live there. So even though I feel I'm from Guatemala, at the same time, I feel I'm from here. And my biggest dream is to get my residence.
An estimated 11 million people are like Cindy, living in America's towns and cities, more than half from Mexico and other Latin American countries. President Donald Trump signed an executive order in January that tightened immigration enforcement. Recently, Trump urged police chiefs to arrest those involved in criminal activity so they can be deported.
You know the illegals, you know them by their first name, you know them by their nicknames. You have that power. You know the bad ones, you know the good ones. I want you to turn in the bad ones.
For those living in the shadows, like some waiting for food at a Catholic charity center in Washington, there's widespread fear. They worry about what the Trump administration will do next. As they quickly pick up their groceries in the food pantry, staffer Rodrigo Aguirre has noticed a change.
We're seeing people just become a little bit more afraid about asking for help. Because they are fearful of the consequences, fearful that their name might be given to immigration and then eventually deported.
People like Emelina from El Salvador, who last year fled an abusive husband and gang violence.
People say they're going to be deporting a lot of people, and that's my fear, because I fled my country to escape violence, and then to be deported, that's what I worry about.
pienso y me preocupo.
Emelina hopes to qualify for asylum so she can stay. Immigration lawyer Smita Dazo says Emelina may have a case.
The majority of people that are coming here really are fleeing for their lives. It's really, really scary for these people, and some of them really honestly feel like they have no choice.
But with so many seeking to stay, supporters of Trump's immigration policy say the U.S. must impose limits.
All countries have to deal in the real world, and there are simply far more people who would like to move to a country like the United States than we can possibly handle, assimilate, and accommodate, and still provide a good quality of life and a shot at the American dream for people who are here today.
We are here to stay!
Yet pro-immigration activists at a recent Washington rally say the answer is immigration reform that allows those already here to stay.
It's very important to send a message to this new administration that we are going to keep fighting until we bring justice to our families.
For Cindy and others, the words of the gospel song, "Hold On, Change is Coming," are the only thing they can hold on to for now. Bill Rogers, VOA News, Washington.
Well, now back to Africa again. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe celebrated his 93rd birthday on Tuesday. He's the oldest president in the world. After maintaining a tight grip on power since independence from Britain in 1980, Mugabe is due to run for re-election next year, saying the ruling party has no viable alternative candidate. During a rare interview with a reporter, Mugabe agreed with U.S. President Donald Trump's America First approach and hopes his country's fortunes could change under the Trump administration.
We are just now under sanctions imposed on us, not by Donald Trump, but by Obama. I don't know, I'll give him time. He might come up with better policies and even free us from the thrall of sanctions which we suffered from for so long.
Well, Mugabe blames Western powers for undermining Zimbabwe's economy, but critics accuse him of wrecking one of Africa's most promising economies through policies such as violent seizures of white-owned commercial farms and money printing. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. And also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, evidence amounts of brain injuries in players of American football. Stay with us.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
Well, it's time now for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with a look at male contraception and others. Lino?
That's right, Vincent. In a recent study using monkeys, an injectable gel has proven to be 100% effective as a male contraceptive. Called Valsa gel, the non-hormonal substance is injected into the vas deferens, forming a barrier that blocks the travel and exit of sperm from the testes. 16 rhesus monkeys were selected to undergo the procedure before being placed back into groups with fertile females during mating season. After being monitored for 6 months, the researchers found that no pregnancies had occurred. The typical pregnancy rate in such unaffected conditions is usually around 80%. Researchers say Vasal gel is non-toxic and does not affect hormone levels or sperm production. It has no known side effects and is fully reversible. The Parsemus Foundation, the nonprofit that funded the research, says human trials should begin as soon as the proper funding has been acquired. Now, the United Nations is warning that some 2 million refugees across Africa are facing critical shortages in food assistance. That's according to the World Food Programme and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Refugee operations in 10 African countries are experiencing cuts affecting the quantity and quality of food assistance for approximately 2 million refugees. Agencies say the nutritional situation of these refugees before the cuts to food assistance was already worrying and is now worsening. South Sudan is one of 10 countries facing cuts in food aid. Food rations have been dramatically cut in some cases by up to 50% in large operations, including Cameroon, Chad, Kenya, Mauritania, South Sudan, and Uganda. Farhan Haq is the UN Secretary General's deputy spokesperson.
The number of refugees in Africa nearly doubled from 2.6 million in 2011 to nearly 5 million in 2016. While donor funding for refugee assistance increased during this period, it did not keep pace with rapidly rising needs. As a result, the humanitarian response is significantly underfunded, and this has forced cuts in food assistance for some groups of refugees.
And UN agencies also warn that the shortages could worsen in coming months without new resources to meet food needs. As evidence mounts about brain injuries in players of American football, new research suggests even lower impact soccer, the game the rest of the world calls football, may be hard on the brain as well. VOA's Steve Baragona has more.
Ball meets head. That's just part of the game in soccer, the sport known worldwide as football. Inside your head, your brain is the consistency of a firm pudding, says John Hardy, professor of neuroscience at University College London.
But your blood vessels are just a little bit tougher, and so if you do a rapid rotation, they act like little cheese wires and do bits of damage around them.
In American football, hard hits are common, and concern is growing about what that does to players' brains. But it's not clear whether frequent head contact that happens in soccer is also a problem. So Hardy and colleagues studied the brains of 6 longtime soccer players who died with dementia. They found a type of brain damage called chronic traumatic encephalopathy in 4 of them. CTE is different from Alzheimer's disease, but Hardy says the results are similar.
And certainly they are additive pathology. So if you've got a little bit of brain damage to do with an Alzheimer change and a little bit of brain damage to do with CTE, you're more likely to be demented.
Soccer is the most popular sport in the world, with clear health and social benefits. And Hardy says this early stage research is not enough to pull the kids off the soccer field.
The people we've studied, these are people who are professional footballers, who played football probably every day of their lives for 25 to 30 years, probably many hours a day. This is very different from a casual weekend player or a school player. It's just a different order of magnitude of contact.
British soccer associations have pledged to support more research on the subject. Steve Baragona, VOA News.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent?
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. London Science Museum opens a robots exhibit that traces mechanical technology over the past 5 centuries. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. The UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, says that nearly 1.4 million children are in danger as famine looms in Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Yemen. In South Sudan, health facilities see a rise in malnutrition cases due to the effects of war and a collapsing economy. In Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe, in power since 1980 and now 93 years old, says he can handle running again for president in 2018. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela's grandson, Buso Mandela, awaits his court hearing on charges of contempt of court and failing to pay child support. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Now, the word robot was coined by Czech playwright Karel Čapek almost 100 years ago. But robots have been around in some form for 500 years or more. London Science Museum has opened a robots exhibit that traces the mechanical technology over the past 5 centuries. Here's VOA's Deborah Block.
Because we have not yet learned to make sensible use of them.
They're high-tech, futuristic, straight out of science fiction. But the robots that capture the most attention resemble humans.
We think that humanoid robots are this brilliant combination of hubris and science and technology, but also a healthy dose of egocentricity, creating these machine things in our image.
The more than 100 robots on display include this 1957 humanoid robot and this elegant silver swan created in 1773. This clock, built in 1596, helped trigger ideas about the human body as a machine, leading to the creation of the first robots.
Robots themselves have existed as automated beings that are capable of being programmed for many, many hundreds of years. We begin the story at the Science Museum 500 years ago, which is when we have our earliest artifacts on display. But really, in literature and archives, you see evidence of robots going even further beyond that.
Human fears and misgivings are often reflected by the robots seen in movies and pop culture.
A lot of the science fiction robots that we create are very malevolent characters because they're personifying these anxieties that we have about the future.
But those human-like robots will likely remain science fiction for a while longer.
The most advanced learning robot that we have on gallery is actually called the iCub, and that has the intelligence of a 5-year-old child. So after the 5 centuries of investigation and research and development, this is how far we've come.
Much of the focus on the future of robots is factory automation, or helping humans with a variety of tasks.
You'll never guess what Jamie said this morning.
To make their lives easier. Deborah Block, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good day.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
41-year-old Patrick Hardison is recovering well after a rare and new medical treatment in a New York hospital. Transplant.
Hardison remains in the hospital where the medical staff monitors him for a possible rejection of the new tissue, which is common after transplant surgeries. Rodriguez, who led the procedure on Hardison, said face transplants are not common.
A transplant is when a patient receives an organ or other part of the body from someone else. Transplant can also mean to move people or items from one place to another.
Now, when you hear the word transplant, you will know what this newsword means.